Hey, welcome to our Homebuyer Seminar. I'm Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media, along with my good friends.
Patricia Castillo.
And
Shannon the lender.
And we get together every week and talk about your first home buying or your next home buying experience. What's happening in the market? Shannon, let's start with you, man. How are those interest rates?
They are everywhere. They're going up and down with this administration, going
it's a
left.
Target.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It is definitely a moving target. I can't even really predict or kind of guess on where things are going to be. So I'm getting people asking me daily, hey, what are the rates today? What are the rates today? What are the rates today? And I even have to check because it's all over the place.
They are consistently staying under 7 though over the last couple of weeks.
Yes,
they have remained under 7%, which is good.
Yeah. Other than Friday last week, just to keep everybody sharp, went above 7 for a split second, then back down again.
Yeah. Right. So for first-time home buyers, a little nugget: when you get pre-approved, your loan is not locked in, right? When you open escrow, your loan is still not locked in. You have to let your lender know, hey, can I lock the rate now? And when you're in escrow, you can actually still, quote unquote, float the rate, meaning that you can leave it open until you see a day where it's at good standing and lock it. So, in these environments, it honestly goes day by day. So if you're getting pre-qualified, that does not mean you're getting your loan locked in. You have to be in escrow, be under contract. And once you're under contract, you can lock. But even if you're under contract, you can also opt to not lock your rate. So it's definitely talk to your lender, have a game plan in terms of, hey, depending on where the market's at. I always like to lock as soon as I can, just because you're not surprised. But I've had some clients roll the dice and win big. So, and I've had clients roll the dice and not so much. So I'm not a gambler myself. So I'm always going to encourage you to lock as soon as you can. But I've had seen some winners in my day. So
I have a question about the floating part, right? So let's say you're in escrow, you have your pre-approval, and you know what you were quoted on for a rate, but as you mentioned, you're not locked in yet. At what point does the lender not say, okay, we can't float it down anymore? Like, let's just say if the rates went down, 0.25% from one day to the next, or within a couple of days from when you received your quote, at what point is it just too much to float down?
That's a good question. I mean, in my opinion, yes, I think as soon as it comes down even 0.25%, I would say that's a reasonable time to lock. But I have had clients that they say, no, I want to wait again. So it definitely depends on your team, going back to what we said. So another point is when should you not wait anymore? And I think, hey, this is a two-part question. If you're pre-qualified and you're already purchasing at the max purchase price that you can, I suggest to lock right then and there, because if the rate goes up a little bit and you're already at the top of your purchasing power,
right,
there could be some issues there. There could definitely be some issues there where you might have to buy down the rate now at that point. So if you're qualified for, let's just say $1 million, and you're buying a house at $997, I think you should lock right away. Now, if you're a little under that and you have some wiggle room just in case, it makes sense to roll the dice. And one of my clients, he was very well qualified. He qualified for way more than he bought. He bought a little condo by himself. And he could afford that. He could afford that risk. But that's one. So if you're at the top of your purchasing power when you're in our contract, I definitely suggest lock right away. Number two, if we are already done with the appraisal, if our conditions are done, at that point, I gotta cut it off at some point. We gotta lock because we're ready to get docs in, and that's obviously when you're ready to get docs in. At that point,
right.
So,
and that's kind of stretching it too far, I think, if you're really going into the appraisal, right?
Yeah, I highly suggest my clients to lock at least the first 2 weeks for an escrow. I let it go for a week, 2 weeks, and depending on the situation, obviously, right? But if you're already at the top, please lock. just because when you're buying a house, as you know, there's so much you're going to have to deal with. On top of that, you're going to call for like, where's the rate at? What's my payment going to be? You know, it's a lot. So,
Right.
yeah.
And especially if you're a buyer and you barely have enough for your down payment and your closing costs, and the rate goes up just
That's
a
the
little bit
thing.
more, then you're going to be short on your cash to close, right? So
It affects a lot of things.
You want to lock in.
And to your point, your cash to close also includes your prepaying interest, because your mortgage payment's not the next day you close. Your mortgage payment's typically 15 to maybe even 30 days after, but you still pay interest every day. Let's not, you know.
Well, you pay prorated to the end of the month at the close of escrow.
Exactly.
And then you'll pay to the end of the following month, right?
Exactly.
So if you're closing today, you would at escrow pay you would pay 17th through the 30th in escrow, and then you'll pay May 1st. That is your May 1st payment. Your first payment is June 1st. So you do have about 45 days on average before you have to pay May 1st payment.
Yeah, and that's, but like I said, nothing's for free, right? They're not going to give you those days for free.
Correct.
Essentially, it's in what's called your prepaids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're prepaying taxes, insurance, and interest. So going back to your Bill's right, and Patricia's right, your rate is going to affect your cash to close 100%.
Right.
And especially with that prepaying interest. I mean, again, depending on how the rates go, it could be minimal, but again, every penny counts, especially when you're buying a house.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what I have. The other thing I think me and Patricia were talking about that I'm going to bring up, that Congress is revisiting banning the trigger leads. So I know this is a very sore spot with a lot of buyers. Unfortunately, when we're pulling credit, you might experience people calling you, other lenders calling you, hey, you're interested in getting qualified. What lenders are doing is they're buying leads from these companies that are getting them essentially from the credit bureaus. So let's see what Congress decides on this bill to hopefully, pretty much essentially what it will do is the only people that can contact you are the people that have written consent from you, or who have, if you said, hey, I raised my hand and I want you to contact me. So I know that that's a sore spot for a lot of buyers out there. Unfortunately, when it comes to loan officers, we're trying as best as we can to hide your information when we're pulling your credit. Sometimes
right, that's an option, right? That a buyer can say, I want to opt out from being contacted by, 100 lenders once my credit is pulled. And so even I've had clients that have opted out from being called, and they still get called. So their information is still being circulated and sold somewhere.
You can.
Pulled.
Yeah.
Can I make two predictions real quick? One is Congress won't do a darn thing. They're just lazy. Other than get paid, they're not doing anything. And second, I would say that, what they do will not stop people from being approached. The opposite. The reason why Google pays Apple billions of dollars just to put their browser on an iPhone is to collect people's data. The data is worth money. And, in the real estate industry, there are companies that sell leads. It's really just data of people's phone numbers, like probate leads, probate filings with names and numbers. And they sell the data with do not call right on the leads. And yet virtually every real estate agent who cold calls those numbers too. And so that's not going to change. I just think that the law's not going to change the process. The trigger leads aren't going to change. The opposite. There'll be new technology. I'm surprised that Zillow hasn't maybe sold who clicks on their listings, for example, or Redfin, or maybe they do, or maybe they're testing it, or who knows. But I just think more and more we as consumers, our actions are being monitored and sold. And I just think as a buyer, you need to understand that's the process. Protect important information appropriately, but don't think for a second it's going to be private. There's nothing private about the financial services bank. Almost every bank has been fined millions of dollars for our data being caught. Government agencies, IRS, Social Security have been hacked by countries and people. So I just think that when people get very upset about that, they're missing the point. It's all out there. All the data is out there. And you have to protect yourself, protect your accounts, protect your privacy as best you can. But no, it's going to be sold. That's just the reality of the economy we're in these days.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think the opt-out feature does minimize the calls. It's they're still getting called, but not as much. I had a buyer that didn't get opt-out, or the lender didn't think to opt them out, and he called me so upset. He said, "My phone has been ringing off the hook all day. This is my work phone. He can't send any calls to voicemail. He has to pick up all the calls because he's in sales." And so that was pretty frustrating. Eventually, they died off after the first week. I had another buyer. Actually, we're working on one, me and Shannon. And I asked him, "Can you opt her out so she doesn't get 100 calls?" And so he's going to submit her application. And you said you're going to remove her social, right? And her phone number, was it?
No, not her social, because that we obviously need that for the credit report. But when you
her
put
contact
credit
information
on your application, I can remove the phone number and email from the application, so they don't have it blatantly. But yeah, sometimes they still, I don't know how. I mean, well,
you can search on a people.
Yeah, they can search on there. But as loan officers, when we have an application, when we click that, run credit button, we do have their email and their phone number there. So I can, that's what my trick I've been doing is just removing that before I click the button and then putting it back on after I run it. So that's
Rocket Mortgage, one of the worst mortgage companies in the history of mankind, is buying Redfin, a company that's never really made a profit. Why? Because they want to get people who are looking for houses, get their information so they can try to sell them mortgages. Now, and Rocket also has a wholesale, which means they'll be giving those leads to their preferred brokers as well. So, there's just more and more creative ways to get that data. And I just think that we as consumers need to be careful what phone number do you give out, and make sure you protect that phone number too, or else you'll be answering the phone all day long when you want to. I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb almost all the time. And some people get frustrated. I know Patricia does once in a while. But, just when I was saying, I get so many phone calls that are just, unsolicited. And so,
spam. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but everything I've said about, I just feel like you need to take control of it and try to be at the front of that rather than be a victim of it. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, right now I'm seeing more buyers. I'm getting more calls from people that want to be pre-qualified. And, if you're looking at renting versus buying, you could possibly find a rental that's just a little bit lower than what you would pay for a mortgage. But in the long run, you're paying rent for something that's never going to actually belong to you. It's nothing tangible. It's not going to create wealth for you in the future. So really look at the, your financial situation. We can definitely help you with that as well. Because I keep reminding buyers every year you're going to receive a rental increase anywhere from 3 to 5% on your rent. And with a mortgage, you're going to have a fixed payment. So you can rely on that payment for the next 5 or 10 years until you decide to refinance again. And the other positive thing about buying is you have your tax write-offs for property taxes. You can reduce your payment once you refinance. And if the rates go down even further, you can refinance again. So as long as you don't have a prepayment penalty on your loan, you can refinance again and get your payment down even further. So there's definitely fluctuations within that payment that you can look forward to. It's not going to be immediate, but it would be something that you can refinance maybe in the next 6 months after you close escrow.
Yep.
Well, there is that silver lining there for any buyer that's looking to buy a home right now. And you might be thinking, well, the payment's a little high, but your rental payment is going to be high too. And it's going to be high next year when they give you the rental increase. So at least you have some assurance knowing that your payment is not going to be increasing over the next few years. Unless you refi, of course, you're going to have a lower payment, which is going to be better.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So if anybody, I know we're trying to wrap this up by 4:20 because Shannon has somewhere to go, an appointment. Any last words, Shannon or Bill?
For me, I am saying the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of people getting out to buy. I know that there's a lot of movement going on in the market right now, guys, but that's where a team comes in. So definitely reach out to, either of us and to help you navigate through this market.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the market is definitely heated up for springtime. I mean, I have buyers bidding on listings. The biggest problem I have right now is I have listings where people bid more than we listed it for, and I want to say it's embarrassing because I did my job properly, but to explain to my customer, hey, we listed this for X and we're getting offers at what, X plus whatever.
Right.
And here's what we need to do about it. It's really interesting, especially in a probate setting. So I'll say this, if you find the right property, get an offer on it, get it tied up as quick as you can.
That's right. I see more and more buyers coming out. So it's definitely getting even busier than it was. And if rates go down just a little bit more, you're going to see more buyers come out. That's going to create more competition for the buyers that are looking right now. So like Bill said, if you see something that you like, a property, that's something that you have to move on quickly. Don't wait and think about it for the next 2 or 3 days because it could be an escrow by then.
Seems like okay. Well, let's see. Shannon the lender. I know they find you at Shannon at Fund with Shannon. At Fund with Shannon on Instagram, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
At Fund with Shannon. Okay, not Fund with Shannon. And Batista, how people get a hold of you?
My cell phone, 323-365-9909.
Very nice. And I'm at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And really appreciate you guys being here with us today. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk soon.